everyone, and welcome back to Haven Within Stronger Minds, Better Futures, a podcast dedicated to promoting mental health awareness, reducing stigma, and providing practical tools to support well being. As part of my Girl Scout Gold Award project, I've had the opportunity to speak with professionals from a variety of fields to better understand the challenges that young people face and the resources available to help them thrive. Today's episode is especially relevant for graduating high school seniors and their families. The transition from high school to college is an exciting milestone, but it can also bring uncertainty, pressure, stress, and significant emotional adjustments. Whether you're preparing to leave home, navigating college decisions, worried about making friends, or just wondering what the next chapter will look like for you, you're definitely not alone. To help us better understand this important transition, I'm honored to be joined by Dr. Redding from Harvard, who will share expert insights on the emotional challenges students may face, how families can support their students, strategies for coping with college related stress, and advice for building resilience during this period. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Redding. And to start, could you please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little about your background and work with students and young adults?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be part of your podcast. I am a member of the faculty at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and I have been working with young adults, both high school students and college students, for more than 25 years. I teach courses on how we grow and change across the arc of our lives, and I focus specifically on mental health and well-being for young adults as we're navigating life transitions, particularly that moment of transition from high school to college. I also have a brand new book out called Mental Health in College, based on 20 incredible practitioners and students who talk about what the experience is like to navigate these very real, very complicated ups and downs that everybody has as they're navigating this moment of transition.
Great, thank you. So, to start, I wanted to ask you something that I guess a lot of people wonder, but why can this transition feel really overwhelming, even when students are really excited to start like this new chapter in their lives and they feel like they've gained a lot of freedom?
Yeah, I think that it is totally normal for something to be equal parts exhilarating and exciting and overwhelming. Those things are not mutually exclusive. What we know in that moment of transition is there is so much anticipation. There is so much to look forward to. We've been counting down and looking forward to and, planning sometimes for years about this moment when you get this new kind of freedom and you get to explore in a new way. At the same time, any moment of transition is hard. You're losing sort of connection in the way that it's always been. You're entering a new chapter. You don't have the same rituals and routines every day, the things that are familiar. And suddenly you're making all of these micro decisions about how to live your life that are completely new, and that can feel overwhelming. So, for example, in high school, you are in school, most students are in school all day, and you go from one class to the next to the next. After school, you have extracurriculars, then you have homework time. Maybe if you're lucky, somebody made a delicious dinner and you don't necessarily even weigh in on that. Suddenly, when you get to college, you have maybe one or two classes a day, and the rest of your day is this unstructured time. You have to figure out, when do I study? What do I do with this? What's good for social time? Even going into the dining hall, there are hundreds of combinations of things that you can have for dinner suddenly. And all of those micro decisions take a toll. It's just a lot of emotional labor you didn't used to do on top of the transition and everything that's new.
Mhm. I definitely understand the like micro decisions you're talking about because even as someone in high school, I feel like as I'm growing up, like my parents are giving me more freedom
Wonderful.
and I decide to like make different choices and I learned that I have a choice in a lot of more things, but that kind of adds a little bit of stress and I'm like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision or not. So
Yeah.
I can definitely understand that.
I love that your parents are doing that. I wish more parents would do that because the moment you just described of like, am I doing the right thing? This feels stressful is a great thing to practice when you have the support from home. And those micro things, like what you're having for dinner, that doesn't have a massive consequence for your life. And so practicing the stress and it's okay if I make an imperfect decision is really, really important.
Mhm. So, how can students mentally prepare for this major life change before college starts?
That's such a good question. I think the first thing is something all of the adults need to do to help students, which is we need to stop saying. that college is going to be the best 4 years of your life. We say that all the time. And of course, you're going to have great moments in college. You're going to have incredible highs. You're going to meet great people. But not every day feels like that. Most college students feel lonely a lot, and that's okay. And so we need to change the narrative so that students know that going in. And so they're preparing for the reality of what it's like to be disconnected from your friends. I mean, you can text them, you can be on Snapchat, you can be on TikTok with them, but they're not there in the same way that they were before unless you're going to college together. Preparing for what it's like to have those moments that we call in the literature friend sickness, which is a combination of the word homesickness and friendship, because the people who see you and know you best and with whom you feel most comfortable, they're not part of your daily life in the same way anymore. And so remembering that. I think the other thing is also just setting realistic expectations for ourselves. So, one of the things that we see many students struggle with in the transition to college is when they don't get an A on their first assignment. And knowing going in that not getting an A on your first assignment is normal and expected and part of the process of college, you are pushing at the bounds of what you know. And if we don't level set around that, then students are not only very stressed, but they stop taking risks and they stop taking new courses and exploring and pushing themselves. And ultimately, that's what we really want everyone to be able to do when they're in college.
And tying into that thing of expectations, how can students cope with not getting into their dream college? Because I know that's something a lot of people, like a lot of the seniors this year and last year that I saw, they had to kind of deal with like not getting into where they'd imagined their entire future. So how would you go about that?
So, my first career before I became a professor, before I came to Harvard, I was a college counselor. So, this is something that I have thought about a lot. And the solution is that nobody should have a dream school. That's not actually a way that we should talk about college because there are no guarantees about where you're going to get in. You should have 3 or 4 schools that you are delighted to be able to attend, but there shouldn't be a single dream. There shouldn't be a, I'm putting on my sweatshirt of the place that I imagine. You shouldn't be talking about it every day. It should not become your whole personality during senior year that you want to go to a certain school because there simply is no guarantee. The other thing is that there is no school that is absolutely perfect. And so you're putting all of this narrative hope on one place that, of course, has imperfections. And so even if you do get in and you start college at the place that you always envisioned yourself, daily life is not going to feel like the story that you told. And so you've set yourself up for disappointment in that way too. So I really think we just need to stop talking about a dream school, that there are, target schools or there are places where you would love, there are best fit schools where you know you would be happy, but that list can never just be one school.
I've never seen anybody talk about it like that because I think a lot of people they're like, "Oh yeah, like it's okay if you don't get into your dream school, but it's like it's fine if you also want to go there. Like it's fine to have like a big goal that you want to achieve and talking about it like that." But I think that it's really unique to think of it as more of like a place you would like to go, but not as like your dream.
Absolutely. I mean, your dreams should be things that you can realize for yourself, not at the hands of somebody at a committee making a decision. I mean, what we know from so many schools that people would call their dream schools is that there are simply too many applicants for the spots. And so when you don't get in, it is often not an evaluation that you couldn't thrive there, that you wouldn't be great there, that people around the admissions committee table didn't love you. There just isn't enough room. And so if we internalize that as value judgment on ourselves, that doesn't help. By the same token, no school should ever be called a safety school because safety means you're guaranteed to get in. And unless that school has guaranteed admission, then you're also setting yourself up for disappointment. One, if you don't get in, because maybe the admissions committee sees that you're playing the numbers and you're trying to use them as a safety, or you just weren't a good fit, that stings. But what if you end up going there and that school is a really good fit? The story you've told, the way you've branded it, is that it's just safe. It should also be a place that feels like a fit. So the whole language that comes from the strategies of applying to college really don't help when we think about the reality of going to college.
Right. So, what do you think are some of the signs that a student might be putting too much pressure on themselves when it comes to like college applications and trying to decide which college they should go to?
I think that there are signs for both students and parents that they're putting too much pressure. And the first one for me is that it is the sole thing that they start to focus on. So every dinner conversation, every long walk you take, every drive when you're stuck in traffic is about where are we going to visit? What schools are you going to apply to? Have you thought about your essays? I think that's a sign for all of us that this has taken on an outsized importance. You don't want your focus on the future and thinking about strategically how to apply to college to be so overwhelming that you're not living in the moment and actually enjoying what high school is and all of the relationships you have there. So I think that's one thing. The other is this sort of instinct when you are imperfect to assume that that is a mark against you and that's going to keep you out of college. And so students will feel just devastated by an A minus on their transcript or, that they didn't get to be the editor of something as opposed to, a lower tier role in an organization when they're doing an extracurricular. And none of those things are the be all and end all of how somebody is reading your application. In fact, oftentimes an admissions committee might get excited when they see that somebody is really pushing themselves and maybe they got an A minus or a B plus. And the next level up in the class, maybe their grades went up because they're improving. That's actually a more exciting story to be able to tell than straight A's, no blips anywhere. Nobody's looking for perfection because perfection isn't human. And I think that as students, because this process feels so opaque. Like we don't really understand what happens on the other side. And it feels so big and it feels so defining that we're looking for anything we have control over. And what we think we might have control over is our grades or our SAT, ACT score, our extracurriculars. But there's never going to be one singular thing that gets you into college or keeps you out of college in that way. And so, really being able to see those setbacks or disappointments or those moments of imperfection is just part of the process and not, the closing of a chapter, I think is really, really helpful.
I know a lot of people, even my age, because I just finished my sophomore year of high school. And I think that even at our age, when college is still quite like far away for us, I think a lot of people are so like focused on, like you said, making like those imperfections. Like personally, I've seen my friends, like if they get a B plus on their transcript in a class, they think that like their entire world is over, like they're just not going to get into college or anything.
Right.
And I know a lot of people then they try to like make up for that by being in a lot of like different clubs and trying to like overcommit to different activities. And I
Yeah.
think that that at the end of the day can really take a toll on someone because they're just trying to do too much to make up for that when that's not really necessary.
Right. And there's no guarantee that doing those things and the sacrifices you make to take on an extra activity is actually going to help. So all you're doing is you're cutting down the amount of time that you have to be with your friends, to be with your family, to read a book that you're excited about. And I think maybe one of the stories that we've told wrong to young people over many, many years and thinking about applying to college is that there is a perfect version of yourself to present. But when I talk to admissions officers, they often get most excited by the person who's like doing the totally quirky thing, who got very excited about some small activity or some literary genre or starting a podcast. Like those are the things that make you stand out as opposed to sort of looking just like everybody else. And that means that one of the things you can do to help yourself in the process is just be authentic. Where do you actually find joy? What actually matters to you? Stop pretending that you can guess what the admissions committee is going to want and just be yourself. And if they see the real you, you're also going to be ending up at a place where there's a genuine fit.
Mhm. It's really interesting because I saw a video online where someone wrote their college essay about like bubble tea
Hmm.
and how they wrote like they kind of used it as a metaphor for their life, like the process of
Sure.
making. So I think that that's really interesting, and I definitely agree. Like you should just try to be more authentic because I know a lot of people they try to create this version that seems perfect, like you said, which is
Yeah,
just not like them.
absolutely.
So it's important to just be yourself.
Absolutely. And I think we all do that. Honest, so candidly, I when I first applied to a doctoral program, so to get my doctorate, I didn't get in. And I look back at that application and I know exactly why. Because I presented an application of like, here's the story of the research that I think you, admissions committee, is going to care about. And It wasn't authentic to what my research interests were, which was sort of a smaller niche around mental health and well-being and college admissions and this transition to college. But nobody was talking about that. So instead, my application was talking about what other people were talking about. It didn't stand out. And I decided to try again a year later. And I wrote an application that when I sent it off was 100% me on the page. Here's what I care about. Nobody's talking about it. Here's why we need to talk about it. Here's why I am the person to ask and answer these questions. And then I got in and I got a really big fancy fellowship. And I got those things because I put on the page what was true to what I actually cared about. And that's what all people should be doing in this application process. And I saw firsthand how much of a difference it makes.
That's really amazing that you kind of had to go through that and then you just redid it to be authentic to yourself. So that's really
Yeah.
cool.
My thought process when I sent off the application the second time was I have nothing to lose. And if this excites them, then this will be the right place for me. And, I ended up back at Harvard, a place that I really, really love. I'm now on the faculty, so I know exactly why that first application of here's what I think you want was just never the right solution. And so we need not to be doing that as high school students applying to college either.
How can families support students in a healthy, non-pressuring way?
So I think this goes back to the answer before that what we should all be doing as members of a family is recognizing when we are spending too much time and too much energy talking only about college and what comes next. That should never be every night at dinner what we're talking about. Every trip shouldn't be planned around visiting a different campus and figuring it out. We should plan a trip around visiting family, doing a thing that the entire family wants to do. And if there's a college campus nearby, that's great. But I think what happens is parents understandably only want the best for their kids and they want to do everything that they can to help their kid realize the dream that they're having. And again, we're going to soften what dream is. So our dream is finding a best fit school, not any singular school. But they're doing their best to encourage and maybe push, like, are you thinking about how do you have a strategy? Are you studying for your SAT? How can I help you? But that can feel too much at different points. You want to know that your parent is celebrating who you are and what you're doing that has nothing to do with college. And so all families need to make sure that conversations are equally about all of those other things, so that it does feel like a collaborative, supportive, we're in this together, finding our way to this really exciting milestone. And also, the student is in the driver's seat. This is their process. And so finding the balance between those two things. But if you notice 3 dinners in a row you've been talking about college, that's too much. You need to talk about something else.
I definitely agree with that because for me personally, there have been times like throughout the school year where my parents asked me a lot of times, they're like, how are your grades? Like, did you turn in this assignment? Did you do this? Did you do this for your podcast? Did you do
Mhm.
that for like a club and blah, blah, blah? And there have been times where I've been overwhelmed with it. And I
Yeah.
think that it also goes with like understanding when you need kind of a break because I did have like that conversation with my parents. I was like, it's becoming a little bit too much. I think I
Yeah.
just need like a little break from the talk about everything school related. And I just like want to be able to have kind of time to relax when I get home instead of
Yeah.
going to school and then coming back and then talking more about school or college, like
Yes.
because all like my project is related to what I want to do in college. So then they talk about college too. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's important to just have that conversation and kind of set boundaries as well.
Yes. I mean, I love that you did that. And I love that it sounds like your parents heard you as well. I think what students need to know is that they can put those boundaries on. Be like, I need a week off. I need this to be the month where we don't talk about college. And parents need to receive that. And part of what it takes for that to happen in most cases, and I hear you doing some of that and what you were talking about, is reminding your parents that you understand what the timeline is, what the stakes are, here's where things land. This is not a moment where we have to be hyper fixated on this thing. This is a moment to relax and make sure that it's not too stressful. So good on you for having that conversation. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So what advice do you actually have for students who are worried about making friends? So now we're transitioning from kind of that high school
Yeah.
period to the college period.
So, oh, I have so much advice because what we know is that it's really hard. It's really hard to make new friendships and build new community in a new place. So maybe the first thing is to know that it is hard and it's going to take time. You are not going to instantly find your best friend on day one. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, that's not what's going to happen. And understand that this is an opportunity to sort of try on very different kinds of relationships and expand your social network and, stay open to that. I think also being a little bit extra brave, especially in those like first 10 days when everything is new. The thing is, everyone is new, which means everybody is feeling the like, where are my people? Who am I going to sit with in the dining hall? I don't want to go to the coffee shop and sit there by myself. Like, be the person who sits down next to somebody who's alone because you are also alone and just name it and be like, wow, the beginning of the year, this is so stressful. Or you're alone, I'm alone too. Let's figure this out together and just like lean into the awkwardness of it all. I think there was this very cool study that was done with college students where everyone had, it's called the spotlight effect, where they thought people were sort of paying attention and judging them in a way that they weren't. And so the experiment was that they sent a group of students into a room where people were sort of filling out a survey wearing a really embarrassing t-shirt, like a, you know, kind of corny old band singer on it. And half of the students, when they were going in and they were embarrassed, they were like, everybody's going to be paying attention, or at least half the people are going to be paying attention. They're going to be judging me for it. And it turns out that very few people even noticed the t-shirts. And so, as we are in that moment of transition and building new friendships, we can so get in our heads that people are paying attention, like, oh, everybody's probably thinking about why I'm sitting alone, or everybody's probably thinking about why I don't have this cool jacket that they have, or the hint, the like secret clue is like nobody's really paying that much attention because they're in their own heads thinking that same thing that they are being judged. So like let go of some of that pressure, even if you're wearing a really funky band t-shirt of something that nobody's ever heard of, that probably is going to spark a really good conversation more so than judgment. And so letting up on some of that pressure, I think, can be helpful.
That's a really cool study. I've never heard of it. I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna go search it up because that's really
absolutely.
interesting. And I think that relates to even like high schoolers and middle schoolers because I know a lot of people are just insecure in general during the teens.
Of course. And I mean, not only is it just an insecure time because you're changing and everything, just it feels very awkward. There's something
Mm.
that's actually happening in our brains when we are growing up and sort of in this period of adolescence that makes us hyper aware of feeling like other people are watching us. It's called the imaginary audience. And like very briefly, the thing that happens, sorry, the professor in me has to come out, but the thing that happens is your brain development allows you to think about sort of multiple realities at once in a way that you weren't able to do it before. But parts of your brain are developing at different rates. And so your brain gets confused and it thinks about other people. You are always thinking about yourself. And so you are now able to imagine other people are thinking something different, but you assume that they're still always thinking about you. And so that imaginary audience makes you hyper aware of like, oh my God, I have a pimple here, or, there's something on my jeans, or I spilled something at lunch, or you are so fixated on that because your brain has like tricked you into thinking that other people are paying attention. But from being just finishing your sophomore year, everybody is having those same feelings at the same time. And so it's so funny. It's such a funny quirk of the way our brains work. But when we know it, we can sort of push back a little bit and remind ourselves like, nobody's actually caring all that much.
Yeah, that's really interesting though. Thank you for talking about that. So,
Sure.
kind of relating to what you talked about before about like loneliness, how a lot of college students feel lonely.
Oh.
What can students do to cope with their loneliness for like the first few months of college?
Hmm. I mean, the first thing is to know that it is totally normal to feel lonely. Being in transition, not being with like your core network of friends, having that moment of separation just feels lonely. And it takes time to build the kind of relationship where you feel like very seen and known and grounded. So that's just part of it, that you're not doing anything wrong. And so I interview college students around the country. I use archival interviews with students going all the way back to the 1940s. And the one thing that we've seen in all of that 80 plus years of interviews with students is everyone feels lonely and everyone assumes that they are alone in feeling it. So I will hear from students in these recordings in the 40s and 50s and in these recordings now of saying, like, yeah, I haven't found my friends yet. I feel really lonely. I haven't figured it out. But you know who's got it all worked out? My roommate. They have totally found their friend. They're settled. I wish I could be more like that. And in some cases, we even have interviews with their roommates who are saying the exact same thing. I'm lonely. I haven't figured it out. Everybody else has figured out this place and these dynamics. I wish I had it all together, like my roommate, who's the original one who we heard from. There's this thing that happens where we don't name it for each other. And so we assume that we are the only ones feeling and experiencing it. And so, one powerful thing you can do as a student in the transition is to just candidly say to one person who you trust with whom you're building a relationship, I'm feeling really lonely. I really miss my friends from home. Do you have that too? And open up that conversation. Because as soon as you recognize that that is not unique to you, that you are not the only one feeling it, that you are not doing anything wrong, immediately you can exhale. Sort of the stigma of it disappears. And that's really powerful.
That's really cool. But yeah, I definitely think that, well, even with friendships originally, like all throughout your life, you kind of have to like find that commonality. So I'm sure that like loneliness can be something that a lot of people experience and can talk about. Because even like in high school for me, because of
Yeah,
course I don't know about college, but
not yet.
in high school, I know a lot of people have felt lonely,
Mhm.
and my friends have told me that, and I've sincerely been able to tell them too if I feel like it, like my closest friends. And it kind of also can result to like your friends including you more with like a different group of friends, introducing you to other people. So it can create more like connections too.
Absolutely. I mean, not only do you then know it's normal, but them knowing that you're struggling really opens up that pathway for them to be able to help you. I love that you're doing that. That's fantastic.
So when should a student consider seeking professional help if they need it in terms of this? And how can they access it on campus?
Well, that's a great question. So I think that there are a couple of things. The first thing is many students are coming into college and they already know that they need professional help. They've already started with a clinical care provider, they already have medication. And so before they get to campus, they need to set up a protocol. They need to find a new doctor. They might be changing insurance or moving to a different state. They might be looking for a care provider on campus. That's probably most likely. And so that needs to happen a month or two before you even get to campus. Whenever the portal opens up so that you can find a care provider, somebody who you feel safe and you can trust, set up an appointment and set up an appointment for early in the semester so that you're able to transfer over any of your prescriptions, make sure that there's no lag in care. And I think one of the things that we tend to sort of forget is that those things have to be happening throughout the summer so that you're ready to begin college. If it is a student who has never struggled before, and so they don't have the experience of having a mental health care provider, that is a harder moment to sort of figure out if you're going to reach out for help. And so I think my broader advice would be as soon as you start wondering, should I reach out? Yes. The answer is yes. Reach out. That's the moment. Even if you're sort of thinking, well, this probably isn't big enough, it's probably not severe enough, if you're not ready to go to the campus mental health center, what about a teaching assistant? What about your RA, so the residential assistant on your floor, or even a faculty member? You can say, I'm really struggling with this thing. And I'm thinking of going to the counseling center. Is that a good resource for me? Or what other resources do you know? And in some cases, there might be peer counseling, there might be different apps that you can use. There might be virtual counseling and also support groups for different things. So that can be helpful. But I think, especially reaching out to somebody like your residential assistant and telling them, I'm having a hard time in this area. You don't have to go into a lot of detail, but they can tell you where some of the supports are. The one thing you don't want to do when you're struggling and when you're feeling alone is not to reach out to anybody. You don't want to lean into feeling like maybe I'm doing something wrong or that there might be, people will judge you. They won't. As soon as you are struggling, tell somebody and they'll help you find a point of connection.
I think a lot of people kind of skip out on thinking about kind of more of these logistical things. Like I
Mhm.
know everyone's like, "Oh, like once you move into your dorm, like this will happen and that'll happen. Make sure you make friends and whatever." But I think a lot of people kind of don't think about these aspects. Like if you need like any help with like your health, like with doctors. A lot of people kind of skip out on that. So I'm glad that we can have this conversation about that too.
Absolutely. The one thing that I've seen especially is that people who are taking medication, and especially medication that you don't want to mess with, that, if you skip a dose or if you skip a couple of doses, it's really going to, have an emotional impact. You need to be queued up to get that prescription refilled early on. Some insurance providers will let you have 2 or 3 months worth of your prescription when you're moving to college, but not all of them. Some of them give you a month. And what happens in the counseling center is suddenly 1 month into the into the semester, they're overwhelmed with requests for appointments. And so you don't want to end up where you can't get your prescription filled on time. So you just want to be thinking about these things very much in advance so that you have the care you need when you need it.
And then the last question is, what message would you want every graduating senior to hear as they're entering this next chapter of their lives?
So every graduating high school senior, as they're preparing to go to college, I think I would want them to know that college is great and hard. And the hard is part of it. And that it is totally normal to struggle in this moment of transition, in this new sort of realm as they're exploring. And that I don't want them to think they're doing something wrong. That day when they wake up and they think, did I pick the right school? Maybe college isn't for me. Maybe that major that I always thought was going to be what I wanted to do isn't it. That's just part of the process. It's part of figuring it out, of, asking and answering these big questions like, who am I? Who do I want to be? How am I going to get there? These are questions we all ask ourselves, and it can feel lonely to ask and answer them, but that's okay. The privilege of getting to ask those questions is part of what college is all about. And so I would just want them to know to lean into that and to know it'll all probably work out just fine.
Okay, so that's all the questions that I have for you today. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, and I'm glad that we could have such an insightful talk about college because I know that there's a lot of aspects that so many people just kind of skip out on when thinking about it, and these are some important questions that should be answered and talked about more.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation. It was great to be with you.
Thank you so much. It was great being here on this podcast with you too.